Everybody, Earl at thelogbook.com. We're back for another Voyages of Shelf Discovery mini. It's a new idea I'm trying out this week. Let me know in the comments, give me some feedback if this is a thing you want to see continue in this form. Basically, starting out for this week of, basically kind of piloting the idea, I dug into my existing collection, grabbed some things that I thought were interesting or unique, and we'll just focus on them for a few minutes. That's it. It'll be short. It'll be like Fossils, really. And these two are very short. These are very small items, and they have their backs turned to us right now. But these are two of Kenner's q-bert figures. They were made of like a solid PVC rubber. I mean, they're fairly substantial. You don't want to drop them on your toe or anything like that. There is no articulation. They are not action figures. Kenner came out with several of these, about half a dozen of them. And only about half of them had anything to do with the arcade game itself. These two did not. These two q-bert figures are doing things you do not see q-bert do at all in the game. One of them has some sneakers on. He's got a baseball hat. He's got a baseball in his nose, which seems to me like it's probably uncomfortable, but I don't see any other appendages on your typical garden variety q-bert. If there are other appendages, I'm not sure I wish to know about them. The other one, he's got headphones on. He's got his skateboard. Looks like knee pads. Yeah, knee pads. And so q-bert's playing baseball, q-bert's skating. These are things that do not happen in the q-bert video game at any point. They don't even happen in q-bert's cubes. If they really wanted something canonical, if you could apply that word to q-bert, there should be one that's drinking from a mellow yellow can, which is a really, really deep dive that I'll explain on Fossils sometime. But it's kind of interesting that they decided, okay, just having q-bert and characters from the games isn't going to cut it. We also have to have him doing sports stuff. Otherwise, no one can relate to him. The other figures included q-bert on his flying disc, q-bert with Coily the snake wrapped around him, and q-bert standing next to Slick, the little green guy who you can harmlessly jump on, but you have to jump on him because he is changing the colors of your cubes back to the original color in the game, which is setting you back as far as the progress you need to clear a level. For those of you not acquainted with q-bert. But sporty q-berts, that's a little odd. That's a little odd. Now, the thing that mystifies me just a little, is if they wanted toys of q-bert doing something not from the game, well, down here, you have the q-bert cartoon, which was part of Saturday Supercade on CBS in 1983, and admittedly, the animated q-bert series was kind of a riff on Happy Days, and it cast q-bert more or less as the Fonz. Other than that, you could almost do interchangeable plots with, generic Happy Days plot lines on the q-bert cartoon. Why not do something from that? Of course, that might be another layer of licensing. Kenner had obviously licensed the game, and I'll get back to that in a second because I think it's a very interesting choice and very interesting timing. They had obviously licensed the game, but perhaps the cartoon would have been an additional layer of licensing. Like, we licensed the game characters from Gottlieb, or Milestar, or whatever they were calling themselves. But now we have to license stuff from Ruby Spears for the cartoon. And that's going to cost us extra. So There, there is probably some perfectly ordinary, very dry money reason why this is not a thing that happened. But still, it makes these two particular characters, or these two particular iterations of q-bert as a character, in a toy sense, really baffling. Really baffling. The other thing that's kind of interesting is that Kenner picked up this license and released these in 1984. So basically, a couple of years after the arcade game had already been out. But in that time, we had also had lots of other merch. We'd had storybooks and sticker sets and, kind of the usual housewares items with character likenesses. And we'd had the cartoon, so it may have looked like q-bert was here to stay. But it's kind of fascinating that Kenner would pick these up at, perhaps, to put things in context for you, perhaps at about the time that the Return of the Jedi toy line was starting to peter out. Stuff was still being released from Return of the Jedi into 1984, but it wasn't selling as well as Kenner's previous Star Wars lines had, because there was very much the sense, it was a case where it had been made public, this is the last Star Wars movie. If only we had known. But at the time, Return of the Jedi was the last Star Wars movie. We had no reason to think otherwise. And so you could see where Kenner was kind of perhaps starting to panic that they were about to fall off the Star Wars train, that interest in that was drying up. Now, of course, in 1985, they started rolling out characters from the three movies who had not previously gotten figures under the Power of the Force line, or as the collector's lingo is, POTF1, because when Hasbro bought Kenner out and then revived Kenner as a brand in the 90s and started bringing back the Star Wars figures at that time, those were also branded as Power of the Force, but those are POTF2. Like I said, this is collector jargon, so it's not essential knowledge. But it's kind of interesting that at a time when Kenner almost certainly had to be looking for the next thing with long-term prospects, q-bert? Really? Okay. I mean, it was popular. Not going to claim that it wasn't. But by 84, the video game market was undergoing, the business side of it was undergoing a bit of a meltdown. Those of us who were kids at the time were like, ooh, cheap cartridges, without an understanding that there was a major shakeout on the business end of video games that was causing all of these unhealable deep-cut discounts that we were enjoying. So you hear about the crash, but you also get differing accounts as to what the crash meant to people. That's what it meant to you if you were a kid back then. It was like, ooh, the games are getting cheaper. Because, ooh, there are fewer companies making them, and all of a sudden there are a lot fewer games being made. But that's a whole different discussion. But with all of that going on in the background, it's kind of curious that they landed on, hey, we need something to replace Star Wars as the next big thing. We need something with some legs. Video games. Why not?